Good evening and welcome to our channel. This is Merlin. If you don't know that already, you've probably come to look at him and hopefully listen to me. Today, I would like to talk to you about one of my favorite topics, great books, and particularly great book lists. This is something that I've been working on for many years, and something that basically I'm inviting anybody who's really interested to join me in it, because it's absolutely not a one-man project. A couple of months back, I made a number of videos where I walked you through the Great Books of the West collection published by the University of Chicago Press and Encyclopedia Britannica. That was a project that was headed by Mortimer Adler. It took him decades and decades to work on that with a large committee. We also looked at some books, or showed you some books from other civilizations, and I talked about the collection, The Sacred Books of the East, that was under the sort of the tutelage of Max Müller for about 50 years. And obviously he had many people working on that project, not just compiling the lists, but doing the translations. So both of those collections have about 50 books in them, and I think that one of the difficulties that those men must have had in making this list was not so much what to include, but what to exclude, because again, for anybody who's not familiar, great books are the classics. It's the idea that these are works that have lasting value, that have had an impact upon civilization, that are really valuable to read and reread even centuries, or maybe even in some cases millennia after they were written, and that these are, as human history goes on, we have more and more of these books. The books that are closer to us in time leap out at us more rapidly than the others. So I think keeping a project like this to about 50 books is reasonable, so that you can get it into some sort of, say, a curriculum. That a Great Books College that only teaches these can probably cover about 50. They could probably do that Encyclopedia Britannica collection over, say, a 4-year period. And those of us who are going to take it on as sort of an intellectual challenge to keep feeding our minds and keep trying to have them grow by being stimulated by new ideas that we don't really understand the first time around, and we need to discuss with others to try to get into them. That's a question of decades just to go through a list of 50 books. So it's not unreasonable to limit it. But if you have a mind like mine that's sort of wants to be comprehensive and all-inclusive and look at other things, I started working on other lists long ago. And on my old website, I had posted a number of 4 or 5 different lists. And one of the most common questions I get from people who write to me is, am I going to put those lists up on my new website? Am I still working on them? And so the answer to those is yes and yes. Hopefully, I'm going to post this video on the morning of April 16th. Hopefully by that time, or the day or two after that, those lists will be up and active on my site again, so people who want to peruse them can look at them. And the lists that I have there are, first and foremost, as I just started talking about, I had looked at these lists that these other people had made. There's like this collection of the great books, and obviously you see gaps and you think, well, what's here? And you know that there are other lists. And so I started out on my own list making here by trying to make what I called a combined list. So I took the Great Books of the West, I took the Columbia core curriculum, I took the lists that were used at a number of Great Books colleges, I think St. John's and Malaspina, and I combined those. And so anything that was not on one, I tried to put it onto one list. And there was a fair amount of overlap on those, but I didn't do all the colleges. Part of me would like to keep going and do that, but I got that list to about 150 works, which obviously is an even more impossible task for anybody to ever sit down and actually read through all of them. But for somebody to look at a list like that and say, gosh, if I want to read some important things that are valuable, I want to know what these are, these are good things that I should know about, and this title interests me, or maybe I've heard of this person before, I can look up more and find out about it. So I think it's a valuable resource to have. But when I did that, I looked at that list of about 150 works, and what struck me about them was still what struck me about Adler's collection and the others, is that this is awfully top-heavy in even 20th century stuff, 20th, 19th, 18th century material, and it's really top-heavy in at least English language, if not American authors, and just some sprinkling of other European countries relative to what works were really written in these languages. So basically, American scholars making lists like this were naturally, I think any human being is going to be focused on where he or she comes from. That's what you know. But I just thought that's not, if this is supposed to be the great books of Western civilization, it can't be top heavy in where the compilers come from and in that time period. And so I started out thinking, well, let me just, I studied comparative historical literature and things like that. I said, let me take what I know and do some research and see if I can expand it and maybe make a list of all the important works that were written in minor languages that really never got much attention, like, I don't know, Croatian or Serbian or some language like this that people who haven't studied it or aren't from that area probably aren't going to know very much about that, but seeing a list of important works from cultures like that makes maybe it's worth my time to learn this language. This is what I can look forward to read if I bother learning this language. And so I made a list of great books of European civilization that ultimately expanded to be over 500 works long. And that's what I had up on my old website. But when I was dusting things off and going through it, I found that I never published it before, but I'd further expanded that to be over 800 works of just by going through the literatures and the histories of all the languages of Europe and looking to try to find the most significant things that have been written in those and including them on that. So I'll put that list out there too, and I'll be the first. I have no idea what most of those works were. I have only gotten them from other secondary materials that said these are the significant works in this culture. So I'm not sure that project can ever be finished, and that will become, the other people tried to keep their projects to 50 volumes. This would, if it's ever made into a collection, it would be a whole library. It wouldn't be a bad library, but again, it would not be something that one person could ever hope to read, but one person could go and say, I want to read important things, give me a list. Maybe when I've heard of something once, twice, 3 times, I'll choose something to read from this list. So that was for Western civilization. And then I also took the lists of just working with other lists that are out there, the basic categories we talked about. We have Far East Asian civilization, Indian civilization, Middle Eastern civilization. I had separate lists for each of those. And likewise, if you're one of the people who's been wondering if I was going to put those lists up again, yes, I have, or I will. And yes, I did expand those a little bit too, since I last made them public. But on the one hand, it might be good because it's still something that's manageable. But on the other hand, I'm ashamed to say, even though I've spent so many years living in East Asia and in the Middle East, I was only able to add a handful of books to those lists from the last time I worked at them and compiled them from other lists like Theodore de Berry's lists of East Asian classics and that kind of thing. So I do think it's valuable to continue having lists by civilization, by culture, because those are the books that are influenced in that great books tradition by the great conversation that's going on. And if you can take the time to delve into that, reading them in relation to each other helps you understand them better, will help you understand them better. So I do think it's worthwhile to continue to expand, keep separate lists by civilization, and keep expanding them, hopefully. And I would also think, though, that it's time to start a new list. It's time in our lifetime, as a project of polyliteracy, of people who are interested in the kind of things that I'm interested in and would like to sort of correspond with me and think about this kind of thing together. I would welcome people to collaborate in developing a list of, I would call it maybe great books of the world. Great books, not of one particular tradition, but more thematically. So keeping that thematic mind, it's pretty easy to do, say, with scriptural works, to say, okay, let's have a section of this great books collection where we will look at the Bible in conjunction. And after we've read great books education or discussion, people who don't know, is you read and you discuss in a group. You look at the primary text, you read and discuss. So to read and discuss the Bible back to back with the Quran, with the Bhagavad Gita, with scriptural texts that have been really influential in forming world civilizations. I think that if I look at my own lists, given my background in literature, I'm not immune from my predilections. I would say my list is too top heavy in literature. I love novels and poetry and stories, but when all is said and done, I do think it's theological texts, philosophical texts, scientific texts, scientific discoveries that have probably pushed civilization, have more of a formative influence than imaginative literature. Imaginative literature shows the spirit of a culture, but to get it to push along and have things that can be compared, we need other types of works as well. Back to imaginative literature, though, yes, I mean, it would be good to now we have in the great books of the West, you start out by reading Homer, and then eventually you get to Virgil, but you stay with the Greeks because you're going chronologically there. But it would also make sense to read Homer back to back with, say, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, and with the Shahnameh and other big epic literature. Look at all that together, the same way you would look at sacred scriptures together. Look at, I'm sure, classic philosophy. Talked about the different philosophers that were influenced by Aristotle. So take the Arabian philosophers, Averroes and Ibn Rushd, and people who worked with Aristotle's ideas in medieval Spain and put them back to back with Thomas Aquinas. So to have a look, sort of maybe thematically, with the great books of various cultures and various traditions, and get that on a list together. So to have really representative works of different types from different cultures, and sort of, I think that's a different way that we human beings who are interested in this kind of tradition can look at them together. So again, these lists will be available. If they're not available by the time I publish this video, they will be within a few days. I guess I am trying to encourage people to go to my website and explore it and enjoy it, because I didn't put it up for me. I put it up for you. If you're interested in watching this video, what I have to say, you should be interested in the website. The whole purpose is that that's a place where I can go into more depth than I can do necessarily in a video. That's why I invited people to who have substantive questions to write me to the question and answer page. And I'm sorry, some people, I've gotten more requests than I've been able to respond to each day. So I have about backlog of about 10 nice, long, substantive, interesting letters that I think other people are interested in a study plan or in various issues of developing the ability to read in different languages and how to maintain and balance your languages. So that's on the question and answer page. And then, of course, back to great books. I mean, one thing you could do with great books, if you don't know this already, starting next month, I will be having discussion circles, seminars, virtual circles that you might be interested in participating in as well. And if so, I want to say thank you to all the people that filled out that expression of interest form that I've had up for a while. I'm overwhelmed by the number of people there. I can't do everything all at once. I need to sort of ease into this and ultimately get other people involved in the project. But that also has been, by the time you've seen this video, or will be within the day, replaced by an actual application form. So if you're one of those people who filled out the expression of interest form and you'd like to do something in May, or if you're a new person, fill out the application form and we can do some work together on a project, intellectually stimulating our minds by reading and discussion circles in various languages and in great books. So again, thank you for listening. If you like the concept of looking at lists of what are books that people have considered really significant and are things that I might want to read and be able to read, please have a look at these great books lists. I'm making them available for you for that purpose. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you again next week.